The diner door slammed. Leather boots thundered on the floor. "Look at this crippled relic!" Blake Kingsley barked. He grabbed Vernon Bennett's collar. Fabric ripped wide open. Gasps filled the room. A black dagger tattoo glared on Vernon's chest. Beneath it, 173. The bikers howled with laughter. "Prison ink, Grandpa?" one sneered. Vernon's eyes didn't blink. "It's not prison ink." His voice cut like steel. "It's a kill count." Silence struck. The laughter cracked. Blake shoved him harder. "Big talk for a man in wheels." Forks froze halfway to mouths. Vernon sipped his coffee, unshaken, unbroken. The room held its breath. Outside, engines rumbled low and heavy. Not bikes. Something darker. Something disciplined. In 20 minutes, the men mocking Vernon Bennett would discover who they had touched, and why Navy SEALs never forget their own. If you believe every veteran deserves respect, type honor below and tell us where you're watching from. The sun leaned low over rural Virginia, spilling pale light across cracked asphalt and faded signs. Just beyond the bend in the road sat Bennett's Stop, a weather-worn diner with chipped paint and a hand-lettered board promising hot coffee, honest prices. Trucks idled in the gravel lot, their drivers inside nursing breakfasts before another long haul. Inside, the diner carried the smell of bacon grease and scorched toast. Forks clinked against porcelain, and the hum of an old ceiling fan stirred the stale air. Most patrons kept their eyes down, reading newspapers or scrolling silently on phones. At the corner booth sat Vernon Bennett, 68 years old. His wheelchair fit neatly under the table, the steel frame polished but dented from years of use. A red plaid flannel shirt lay across his shoulders, buttons straining over a chest still broad despite age. His silver hair was trimmed short, his jaw square, lined by decades rather than softened by them. To the casual eye, Vernon looked like a man fading quietly into the background, an aging body, a forgotten veteran perhaps, sipping black coffee with steady hands. Yet there was something different in the way he moved. He cut his eggs with deliberate precision, lifted his mug with calm economy. Even the smallest gestures felt measured as though drilled by habit too old to unlearn. Nora Wallace, the young waitress, noticed it most. She was 19, saving tips for community college, and had worked enough morning shifts to see patterns in people. The truckers fidgeted. The regulars complained about politics. But Vernon, he was different. His stillness wasn't fragile. It was anchored, like a stone unmoved by rushing water. Some customers glanced at him occasionally, then looked away, uncertain why his presence unsettled them. No one ever asked. The clatter of the front doorbell interrupted the morning calm. A gust of warm wind rushed in. Heavy boots scraped the floor, leather jackets brushing against chairs. Blake Kingsley and his crew entered without asking, their laughter too loud for the small space, their swagger spreading like smoke. 6 men, smelling of gasoline and cheap whiskey, claimed the center of the diner as though they owned it. The waitress stiffened, eyes darting to the counter. The cook muttered something and turned back to the grill. A silence stretched across the room, broken only by the scrape of chairs being dragged aside. Everyone avoided eye contact, everyone except Vernon Bennett. He didn't flinch. He didn't even pause his meal. Blake Kingsley's boots struck the linoleum like hammer blows. He swept his eyes across the diner, daring anyone to challenge his presence. No one did. Truckers buried their faces in plates. Locals stared at coffee cups. Fear was a language Blake spoke fluently. But Vernon Bennett didn't look away. His fork moved with unhurried grace, slicing through scrambled eggs as if the chaos belonged to someone else. Blake noticed. "Hey, old man," he barked, his grin curling mean. "You got a problem?" The diner froze. A spoon clattered onto a plate. Vernon lifted his gaze slowly, deliberately. His steel-gray eyes locked onto Blake's, calm, unflinching. That stillness cut deeper than any insult. Blake sneered. "Don't stare at me like that." He stomped forward, every boot step echoing. The others laughed, banging fists on tables, feeding on the tension. He loomed over Vernon's booth, breath heavy with whiskey. "What, you deaf? Or just too dumb to answer?" Vernon finally set down his fork. His voice, when it came, was low, measured. "I hear you just fine." The answer carried no fear, no aggression, just fact. And that rattled Blake more than he admitted. Pride demanded a show. He grabbed Vernon's collar and yanked. Rip. Fabric tore wide open. Buttons skittered across the floor. The diner gasped. Exposed beneath the torn flannel was a dagger tattoo, ink black and sharp against Vernon's chest. Beneath it, bold numbers burned into the skin. 173. The bikers burst into laughter. One leaned close, pointing. "What's that, Grandpa? Prison ink?" Another cackled. "Maybe it's the number of beers you spilled." Their mockery filled the diner, cruel and careless. Some patrons lowered their eyes, pity on their faces. The waitress clutched her notepad tighter, wishing she could disappear. Vernon didn't move. His voice, calm as before, sliced through the noise. "That number," he said, "is how many men I killed." The laughter died. Silence slammed the diner. Even Blake's grip loosened. He searched Vernon's eyes for a crack, for anything that screamed joke, but he found only truth, cold, unblinking truth. Blake forced a smirk. "You expect me to believe that?" Vernon leaned forward slightly, eyes narrowing. "Believe what you want. Death doesn't care what you think." A shiver ran through one of the younger bikers. He looked away, ashamed of his own reaction. The others doubled down, laughing louder, mocking harder, their voices desperate to bury the unease. At the counter, a man with graying hair and glasses set down his fork. His gaze lingered on the tattoo. His heart skipped. He knew that mark. That dagger wasn't prison ink. It was a brand known only to a few, the insignia of Navy SEALs who had gone deeper into combat zones than anyone admitted. And the number 173? It wasn't a joke. It was a ledger written in blood. The man's hand slipped into his pocket. His phone screen glowed faintly as his thumb tapped a sequence memorized long ago. One secure number. One direct line. He whispered 2 words into the receiver. "Dagger, 173. Then he hung up. Back at the booth, Blake leaned close, blowing smoke into Vernon's face. "You're just an old cripple. You can't even stand on your own. Stop pretending." Vernon's eyes didn't flicker. He lifted his coffee cup and sipped. The steam curled upward like smoke from a battlefield. That silence was louder than any punch. And outside, faint at first, came the low rumble of engines. Not bikes, something heavier, something precise. The clock above the counter ticked. In less than 20 minutes, the world inside that diner would change forever. Engines rumbled closer, steady and synchronized. Heads inside the diner turned toward the windows, confusion flickering across faces. The bikers forced laughter louder, desperate to smother the unease creeping into their guts. Blake Kingsley slammed his fist onto the table. "Sit down, Grandpa. You're nothing." His words tried to bite, but his voice cracked. Vernon Bennett placed his coffee cup back onto the saucer. He didn't rise to the insult. Instead, he reached into the pocket of his torn flannel and drew out a small, battered Zippo lighter. Its silver surface was dented, blackened by age and use. He turned it over slowly in his hand, thumb tracing an inscription etched faintly along the side. "Brothers never fall alone." The waitress, Nora Wallace, leaned closer than she meant to. The object didn't look valuable, but the way Vernon held it, like a relic, like a memory carved into steel, sent a chill down her arms. Blake snorted. "What's that? A toy? Going to scare us with fire, old man?" Vernon didn't answer him. His eyes stayed on the lighter, his mind already somewhere else. Flashback, Afghanistan, 2002. Heat shimmered above broken stone. Vernon, younger by decades, crouched in desert dust with Logan Crawford, his closest friend in the SEAL team. Their mission: extract 2 hostages from a cave complex crawling with insurgents. Gunfire rattled in the distance. The team pressed forward, shadows flickering against cave walls. Then came the explosion, an IED buried just beneath the sand. The shockwave threw Vernon back, ears ringing. When he scrambled up, half buried in rubble, Logan was down. Blood soaked his uniform, chest heaving shallow breaths. Vernon pressed his hands to the wound, voice cracking. "Stay with me!" Logan shoved something into his palm, a silver Zippo lighter. His lips moved with words Vernon would never forget. "Brothers never fall alone." Moments later, Logan's breath was gone. Vernon carried that lighter through every mission that followed. Every night, it reminded him not only of sacrifice, but of the lives stacked behind the number now burned into his chest. Back in the diner, Blake leaned closer, mocking. "Lost in your little memories, huh?" "Thought so. Weak old man." Vernon closed his fist around the lighter. His voice came quiet, but every syllable landed like weight. "You don't know what weakness is. You've never dragged a dying man through dirt while bullets snapped over your head. You've never counted the faces you couldn't save." The room shifted. Even those who didn't understand war felt the truth coiling in his tone. The biker beside Blake muttered, "What's he talking about?" But no one laughed this time. The older man at the counter adjusted his glasses, studying Vernon. He knew. His heart raced because only a handful of operatives had ever survived that kind of mission. And this man, quiet, silver-haired, seated in a wheelchair, was one of them. The engines outside roared closer. Tires crunched gravel. Nora's breath caught. She whispered, "Those aren't bikes." Blake stiffened. Pride wrestled with fear. "Shut up. Nobody's coming for him." But deep down, he already doubted his own words. The engines outside grew louder, their rhythm too precise to be coincidence. Not the uneven roar of motorcycles, something heavier, tighter, professional. Inside the diner, every ear strained unconsciously toward that sound, though no one admitted it aloud. Blake Kingsley tried to laugh, but his grin faltered. He leaned in close to Vernon Bennett, still gripping the edge of the old man's torn flannel. "Hear that? Probably farm trucks. Nobody's coming for you." Vernon's reply came low, almost whispered, but sharp enough to cut the air. "People always come. You just never know for who." The words lingered like smoke. Vernon set the battered Zippo lighter on the table. For the first time, the entire diner saw it clearly. The silver surface bore a dent deep across one corner, black scorch marks clinging to its edge. Etched faintly on the side, worn from years of handling, were the words, "Brothers never fall alone." Nora Wallace, notebook pressed to her chest, stared at it. She didn't know why, but her throat tightened. That object carried weight no ordinary trinket could. Vernon's fingers rested on it lightly. His gaze drifted, not at Blake, not at the bikers circling like jackals, but somewhere far away. The night was chaos. Gunfire streaked through broken streets, the smell of burning oil thick enough to choke. Vernon and his unit had been ordered to push deep into the city, cut off from support. He remembered dragging his squad mate through rubble, blood soaking his gloves, the enemy's shouts echoing closer. His lungs burned, but he refused to drop the man. With one hand, he fired into the darkness. With the other, he pulled his brother through fire and glass. When the shooting paused, he pulled out the lighter, Logan's lighter. With trembling hands, he struck it. The small flame barely flickered, but it gave enough light to check the wound, enough light to see his friend's final breath leave him. From that night on, every time Vernon flipped that Zippo open, the memory returned. The sacrifice, the faces, the silence of men who never came home. Vernon closed the lighter with a soft click. The sound was strangely loud, commanding more silence than a shout. He looked at Blake, his voice steady. "You think strength is noise, that it's fists, boots, shouting. But strength is carrying a man until your bones break, knowing you'll never see him again, and still not letting go." The younger biker shifted uncomfortably. One scratched his arm, another looked at the floor. Their bravado drained, piece by piece. The older man at the counter, glasses perched on his nose, finally spoke. His voice trembled, but not with fear, with recognition. "That dagger on his chest, it's no gang symbol. I saw one just like it once, on a man who saved my unit overseas." The room turned toward him. His words cracked the thin wall of denial the bikers had built around themselves. Blake snarled, trying to wrestle control back. "Shut your mouth, old fool. This guy's just another vet telling stories." But even Blake's eyes betrayed him. He had seen that tattoo up close when he ripped the shirt. The numbers were too precise, too deliberate. It didn't feel like a bluff. Vernon said nothing. He didn't need to. He simply took another sip of his coffee, eyes steady, hand brushing once more against the lighter. The silence was suffocating. Every clink of dishes had stopped. Nora realized she hadn't moved in nearly a minute, her breath shallow. Even the cook, usually immune to drama, stood frozen at the grill. One of the younger bikers finally broke. "Blake, maybe we should just—" "Shut it!" Blake snapped, spinning on him. But the crack in their armor was obvious now. The rumble outside deepened, now unmistakable. Vehicles stopped just beyond the windows. Tires crunched on gravel with deliberate weight. The man at the counter whispered, almost to himself, "That's not local law. That's military." Through the glass, silhouettes moved. Disciplined, coordinated, every step in unison. Black SUVs gleamed under the morning sun, their tinted windows swallowing light. Inside, Blake's men shifted nervously. The room felt smaller, air tighter. The waitress backed toward the counter, eyes wide. Blake tried one last bluff, pointing at Vernon. "Don't think your little war stories are going to save you now." Vernon didn't look at him. He set the lighter back into his pocket and straightened as much as the chair allowed. His voice came quiet, steady. "They already did." The diner door handle rattled once. The sound was soft, but it carried the weight of inevitability. Every patron stared at it. Every biker froze. Then the door swung open. Boots hit the floor, 8 of them, heavy, measured, ironclad. The air itself seemed to stand still. Vernon Bennett didn't turn to look. He simply finished the last sip of his coffee, the faint curl of steam rising like the ghost of battlefields long gone. The diner door swung wide, hinges groaning under the weight of presence. 8 men stepped inside, their boots striking the floor in rhythm, their movements synchronized with the precision of years under fire. They wore plain uniforms, marked only with subdued patches, gear strapped across shoulders in quiet authority. No wasted motion, no unnecessary words. The air bent around them, pressing down on everyone present. The bikers froze. Their laughter died instantly, replaced by the hollow silence of men who realized too late they had miscalculated. Blake Kingsley opened his mouth to sneer, but no sound came out. The leader of the team, Commander Grace Sterling, swept his gaze across the room. His eyes landed first on Vernon Bennett. For a split second, the mask of steel cracked, replaced by something else. Respect. He gave a single nod. Vernon didn't nod back. He didn't need to. Sterling turned to the bikers. His voice was low, calm, but it carried storms behind it. "Step away from him." 3 words, nothing more. But the bikers stumbled back as though shoved. One tried to recover. "We were just talking." His voice cracked, betraying him. Sterling's gaze cut through him like a blade. "You put your hands on a brother. That ends now." The room vibrated with the weight of it. Nora Wallace pressed a trembling hand to her mouth, her eyes darting from the old man in the wheelchair to the men now standing between him and danger. Another SEAL broke rank for the first time. He walked to Vernon's side, knelt beside the wheelchair, and looked him in the eye. His voice was steady, reverent. "Sir, permission to stand with you." Vernon gave the smallest nod. That was all it took. The entire diner seemed to exhale. The truth no one had understood now stood undeniable. Vernon Bennett was no ordinary man. He was a legend quietly eating breakfast. Blake Kingsley finally found his voice. You can't be serious. He's just an old cripple." Sterling stepped closer, his tone sharp but controlled. "Old? Maybe. Crippled, perhaps. But do you know what 173 means?" Blake's lips parted. No answer came. Sterling continued, his words slow, deliberate. "It's not a street code, not a prison mark. It's the number of lives ended on missions too deep for maps. Too dangerous for headlines. He carried that burden so you could waste your life on cheap whiskey and leather jackets. Silence swallowed the room. Even the bikers lowered their eyes, trapped in the gravity of the truth. The revelation was complete. The silence inside the diner stretched until it felt unbreakable. Then Sterling's radio crackled. A voice confirmed what everyone already knew. Warrants issued, transport en route. 2 SEALs moved without hesitation, binding Blake Kingsley's wrists with heavy zip ties. The sound of plastic tightening was louder than thunder in that hushed room. His crew followed, pale and broken, no swagger left in their steps. They were marched outside, swallowed by the black SUVs that had appeared like shadows. Engines roared once, then faded into distance. Inside, chairs scraped. Glasses lifted. The cook muttered, "To the old man." Voices echoed it back. To the old man. Vernon Bennett didn't bask in the attention. He simply wheeled himself closer to his plate, cold bacon waiting, coffee gone lukewarm. His words came quiet, final. I didn't need to fight them. I already fought for them. The lesson hung in the air. True strength isn't loud. It's lived. Thank you to everyone who typed honor. Your support honors men like Vernon Bennett. If you believe more people should hear stories like this, please subscribe and share. Until next time, remember, dignity can never be defeated.